holidays. So this is OS in the digital living room of German broadcaster WDR, and we are here to launch a week of special coverage looking at what happened to Syria's refugees who fled the civil war. More in a moment. Now, I want to bring you a report that I read on my Ryanair flight, if I'm completely transparent, on the way here to Cologne. Fascinating stuff. It's from Professor Danilo Mandic. He's a Harvard Research Fellow in Boston. And it's all about smuggling and traffickers and what he thinks we should really be making of it.
Trafficking is essentially smuggling plus deception and or plus coercion. So smuggling can devolve into trafficking when there is a coercive element, when they are forced against their will, for instance, to stay at a safe house, when they have a gun pointed at them and the like, and or when the smuggling is accompanied by deception. So when the smuggler or trafficker lies to them about when they are going, or cheats them out of money, or exploits them, that involves some kind of deception broadly defined. And both are illegal, but we would like to suggest that conflating all smuggling with trafficking is an extremely dangerous way to approach the refugee smuggling issue, and ultimately it harms refugees much more than it harms the criminals.
Now, you had, with your research, when I read your study, a very different, or the people you spoke to had a very different experience or spoke about their smugglers very differently to the way the people I met, the migrants I met, spoke about their smugglers. When I spoke to them, they had very little love for the person who brought them across. What did you find?
The perception of smugglers is very different from how smugglers are viewed by policymakers and law enforcement and indeed the general public. So I think the intuition of policymakers is to say that these people are exploiters of human misery, that they're criminals, that they are traffickers and the like. And indeed some people believe that if only we eliminate the smugglers, the refugee crisis would be over. And this is an illusion, because the migrants themselves have a very different view. They look at their smugglers as allies, as service providers, and indeed sometimes as saviors. The level of trust towards the smugglers is overwhelmingly greater than the level of trust that they express both in in-depth interviews and in surveys and in ethnographic observation. Is enormously greater towards smugglers than it is to government representatives, NGO representatives, people who they encounter on the way, and so on. Partly this is because smugglers are often themselves refugees. Partly this is because they are. Partly it's the ethnic tie, because often smugglers are the same ethno-national group as their. Asking them to rank their smuggler experience, with 1 being sort of very dissatisfied to 5 being very satisfied and everything in between. It was sort of like the Yelp of smugglers.
And I will say I had different experiences speaking to migrants, of people feeling they went through Libya, that they were deceived, etc. However, I do want to get to one point that you bring up, which I wonder what our listeners and viewers think of this one. You and the study recommends perhaps having the authorities, whomever that might be, either government or an NGO, publicise the street prices for smugglers so that people cannot be duped or basically conned out of too much money.
If the criminals have a monopoly on the information and advice that migrants get, that's a serious problem. For migrants to get accurate, transparent information on such things as you mentioned, smuggler prices, locations of dangerous smugglers, which public parks have dangerous traffickers recruiting children, and which parks have relatively benign smugglers who are not known for violence and who do not recruit children, which border crossings are more dangerous and are well developed for smuggling networks, as opposed to which border crossings will result in Hungarians beating them and the like. That kind of information can help them take informed risks as opposed to uninformed risks.
So that is Professor Danilo Mandic, Harvard Research Fellow in Boston. I have to say, there was a lot of what he wrote, very interesting, basically looking at it in a different way. Salama Abdo, listening to that Damascus filmmaker, now a reporter for WDRforyou.